Hello and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Sarah.
And I'm Ben.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's the darkest time of the year.
Yesterday was the darkest time of the year. Every day will be getting brighter.
That's such a great way to look at it. So, you know, I'm holding it together here in the dark, cold Canadian winter. How are you?
I'm getting things ready for Christmas and doing my best not to spiral or freak out and not succeeding very well. But I do have some good news.
Okay.
So since our last episode, folks who follow us on Blue Sky will have seen most of the communications about this, but there have been some issues with our RSS feed syncing with other podcatchers. The ones that have kind of been monitoring are Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, and another listener had actually alerted us to this. Actually, two separate ones had alerted us. So shout out to those two folks for letting us know. I believe things have gotten resolved now.
Oh.
Except for YouTube. It's tough to resolve it because it's kind of just being like, excuse me, SoundCloud. Please? Please help?
Can you click the button that says let our stuff go to YouTube?
Basically, their support has not been responsive, so I'm a little frustrated, but I think they've been solving it because things are resolving. So hopefully, you know, when we upload this episode, we will see that it has indeed been resolved. But in the meantime, we are also looking into some other podcast hosting services. So we may be moving from SoundCloud. We will wait and see how things resolve. But I wanted to let everyone know, you know, if you're hearing this on a podcatcher, yay, it worked.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your patience when we're having these technical difficulties. They don't often come up, and we appreciate everybody sticking with us. There's a part of me that wants to say, like, if you're having trouble listening to the show, like, you can still listen to it just directly from SoundCloud. But if you're hearing me tell you that, then you're probably not having difficulties hearing the show. So this isn't a great form of communication for that message.
Schrodinger's communication?
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. I think people appreciate the sentiment.
I'm glad to hear that it's sorting itself out.
Basically, the issue is something on SoundCloud's backend telling it to block Spotify and other podcatchers.
Great.
So it's literally nothing I can do.
So great for us.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, yes, we are hosting Christmas at Castle Scream Scene this year, and there's just so much to do. Luckily, you've got this week off, so there's at least like that part of being able to have the time to prep things. Meanwhile, in terms of the show here in Scream Scene, I do think it's very ironic because this episode, if all goes well, will be going up on Christmas Eve. I don't know if we've ever had that before. We must have. Maybe we have.
I have no idea.
We've been doing this for a lot of years, Sarah. 8, nearly 9.
No.
We started in 2017. And
no.
Yep.
I just aged 10 years, Ben. I just Benjamin Buttoned in front of you.
You know, and we only do half the number of episodes we used to now. Anyways, the point is, today we are covering our first Egyptian horror movie for the podcast. And I just think it's really ironic that for our episode going up on Christmas Eve, we are going to be covering this, you know, Arabic film.
Sure.
So without beating more around the bush,
what are we watching?
Yes. Blanket disclaimer for this whole episode. I am so sorry if and when I butcher the Arabic pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try my best, but it's surprisingly hard. So I said the name of this movie last week at the end of the episode, and I definitely said it wrong. But today we are watching QASR AL MAL'OUN, which means the cursed palace. So I'm going to probably mostly say the cursed palace from here on out. But QASR AL MAL'OUN. From 1962, directed by Hassan Reda.
Very exciting.
Yes. So this is our first Egyptian Arabic horror movie. And this is a big blind spot in like my world cinema knowledge is like Arabic, Egyptian movies. I have seen Egyptian films before, and I know that for a long time, Egypt was like the only Arabic country with like a film industry, or the only like majority Muslim country, maybe is how I should phrase that, with a film industry. And I know a little bit about why that is, but it's a big blind spot, and we've never covered Egypt or the Arabic film world or any of that before. So Sarah, can you help me out?
Absolutely. So the closest we've gotten to talking about Egypt on the podcast has been in our Mummy episodes.
Sure.
Like in the very first The Mummy movie, I talk about the archaeological craze of heading to Egypt to go digging in pyramids and such. As far as actors go, I think the closest we've gotten to having an Arabic actor on the show is maybe Turhan Bey from Turkey.
Yeah, I mean, like, we did Dracula in Istanbul, which is a Turkish film.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's Muslim, but the Turks aren't Arabs.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So
egg on my face.
Well, no, I just mean to say, like, all you said was like the closest we'd gotten, so I think that's fair. But like, yeah, so there's some distinctions going on here. This is definitely the first time we've done this kind of specific mix of ethnic, national, religious background.
Yeah. So Egypt is a fairly large country, but by and large, I think you could cite the cities Alexandria and Cairo as being kind of the cultural centers. And a big part of that is the fact that they are both port cities. Film has had a presence in Egypt since the beginning with the 1896 projection from the Lumiere brothers.
They hit all the big stops.
They did hit all the big stops. Now, the first Egyptian film was released in 1907. It was a short documentary, and the importance of homegrown film was recognized with some laws in as early as 1911, prioritizing the film industry and organizing the film industry. And the earliest production company was established in Alexandria in 1917.
Okay, that's really early.
Yeah, and I will put a little bit of an asterisk here because that production company was like a director creating a company to make some of his movies. It wouldn't be it's like a studio kind of production company.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, in 1919 to 1925, it's been mostly foreign crews filming in Egypt with Egyptian talent who are established from the stage. Around this time, Mohammed Bayoumi is the only Egyptian on the production side. He is a cinematographer. And even then, he was still only working on foreign projects like 1923's In the Land of Tutankhamun. So having even the films made in your country be foreign funded, foreign crew, maybe with some Egyptian talent on screen, it's not great for a country that is struggling with its national identity. And ironically, this struggle is a few centuries old. So now I'm going to go back into history.
Okay.
I'm not going to go all the way back to the time of the pharaohs. Egypt obviously has a very, very long history.
Very long.
I am going to hit some highlights here.
Okay.
So in the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire is kind of like the big kahuna in this area of the world and has kind of established itself in the Egypt area. I'll put it that way because, borders move around.
Sure.
Then comes Napoleon in 1798. Oh, Ben just rolled his eyes. Why did you roll your eyes with Napoleon?
Fucking Napoleon, man.
Fucking Napoleon. Hey, we love a short king. Or emperor, I guess I should say.
Emperor. Not king. Very important for some reason.
So Napoleon, he begins his campaign in Egypt in 1798. And so the Ottoman Empire and the British Empire combine forces to push against the French, successfully ousting him in 1801. And there's a lot that goes on, but again, just kind of skim the surface. The process of ousting out Napoleon helps establish this gentleman named Muhammad Ali as an Ottoman viceroy to handle Egypt. Mm-hmm. Muhammad Ali begins kind of the process of Europeanization and industrialization of Egypt. Everything has to kind of be run past the Ottoman Sultan, but, you know, Muhammad Ali is still like running Egypt.
Got it. And I'm sure that there's, you know, interest from the British since they don't want it falling into French hands.
100%. The Brits stick around, establishing some influence, a little bit more intact a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But through Muhammad Ali, you know, he establishes a bit more of an independent Egypt, particularly because of the rise of the Egyptian cotton industry, because the American Civil War means the cotton over there is not available.
Sure.
So Egypt becomes the largest exporter of cotton, meaning that, you know, Egypt has a ton of money coming in. They're able to establish themselves to be a little bit more independent, except the fact that they still need to get everything signed off by the Sultan.
Right. And these are Ottoman Turks ruling Egyptian Arabs in a sort of pan-Muslim empire, to sort of lay that all out for people who aren't familiar with like the ins and outs here.
Yes. So it's great that, you know, he's industrializing Egypt, but that process means that there is a lot of debt, and there's also a lot of general resentment about that Europeanization process. So it's as early as like the 19th century, the 1800s, that the nationalist movement really starts to get a foothold. Now, I forgot to write down dates to help with this.
That's okay. We'll hit a landmark eventually and get our bearings.
About halfway through the 19th century, to jump ahead succession-wise, we are going to jump to Ismail Pasha, who continued the Europeanization of his grandfather, and purposefully designing Cairo to be the, quote, Paris of the East. Mm. And this extends to like urban planning, to architecture, and all of this, all the way down to establishing an opera house and a theater in Cairo. To clarify, stage theater. So this is shifting the cultural focus in Egypt to concentrate in Cairo rather than Alexandria. So would you be able to say that Egypt is independent by this point? No. Because they still, as I said, needed the Ottoman Sultan to have any kind of recognition for policies, for leaders. And there's a lot of influence coming from the British and the French, who have interests because the Suez Canal's right there. Mm-hmm. So after Ismail is ousted, Egypt became a British protectorate in 1882 because the Brits, again, wanted to make sure that they had some kind of influence over the Suez Canal. So there we go. We have a date, 1882, to help establish ourselves. Okay. Yes. Like many of its protectorates and colonies, England lifted the status of Egypt after World War I. The Egyptian Revolution of 1919 was definitely a motivating factor.
Well, and like a big World War I thing for the Brits was basically supporting Arab nationalism against the Ottomans. So you get all of these like independent Arab nations springing up post World War I because the Ottomans were the bad guy for the Brits, but they're all kind of like under British influence.
Yes, very much. So Egypt establishes kind of a parliamentary system, but they still have a monarchy. So we have King Fuad I in 1922. England remained a strong ally, and with King Farouk succeeding in 1936, Egypt became a bit more of a puppet government, with the British ambassador pulling the strings of a playboy king.
Mm-hmm.
That's the speed run of Egypt history to give context for where we are with the film industry in the early 20th century.
Good job, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. So culturally and with film in the early 20th century, Egypt really establishes itself as the producer of Arab films. The reason why Egypt, and specifically Cairo, becomes the center of the film industry in, I'll call it the Middle East.
The Arab world.
The Arab world. So I thought, as you do, that it was related to Islam, but it's not.
Oh, okay.
I'll explain a little bit more about what Islam has to do with all of this, but before I do, so the reason that it's Cairo is, like I said, Ismail Pasha establishes Cairo as the center for theatrical and performing arts, to the point where like Pathé in France establishes its own cinema in Cairo in 1906. France, Italy, and even Greek companies are encouraged to set up here in Cairo, which fostered local Egyptian talent. And with the 1911 film policy laws coming in, it helped establish growing Egyptian talent behind the screen as well. Cairo became kind of the cultural entry point into Africa and the Middle East, and this Western investment also meant that arts in, say, Libya or Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Kuwait, Algeria, Jordan are not really able to get established. Those countries have a very struggling film industry. They are there, but they just get so dwarfed by everything being centered in Cairo because it becomes like the port city that everyone goes to.
So Egypt kind of gets to establish a hegemony in Arab-speaking film the way that the United States did with English-speaking film, where like Canada's film industry is very minuscule because we're right next to America, and why don't we just watch American movies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Another big part of it is recovery after the war, but I talk a little bit more about that in a minute. With a concentrated like stage theater industry, this meant that Egypt transitioned relatively quickly to talkies, with homegrown talent in front and behind the camera. Musicals are kind of core to Egyptian film through the 30s and 40s. And interestingly, when foreign films would come in, they would be dubbed in Egyptian Arabic, that dialect, which led to the prevalation of that dialect across the Arab world, to the point where, you know how Quebec, wait, this might be too much of a deep cut for the average. Fine. Okay. You know how Quebec is like, oh, we're French, but then they like completely shun Parisian French and they really want to establish like Quebecois as like the French of Canada. It's kind of the same way that like other Arabic dialects get drowned out by Egyptian dialects.
Yeah, and for like a long time, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but for like a long time, Egypt saw itself as the leader of the pan-Arab movement and community, and yeah.
Yeah. This is a tangent. When Monsters, Inc. was released, they did a dub in Egyptian Arabic, and it kept a lot of like the fun jokes and everything. But when they released it to like home video, they did a new dub where it was more of like that standard Arabic.
Okay.
And it lost a lot of the jokes, and so people like just didn't buy it. And so they had to re-release
the Egyptian Arabic version.
Yes.
That's funny.
In 1935, we see the establishment of one of the biggest studios in Egypt, Studio Mizur. Though it had served as the Egyptian Acting and Cinema Company since 1925, but that was kind of more, they don't really use this language, but the way they behaved was more like a union.
Sure.
Whereas now it's like a full production studio.
Got it.
We see the golden age of Egyptian film from the 40s to the 60s, with popular genres like comedies, musicals, and romance. part of the reason why it's seen as the golden age is because a lot of other film industries, whether that's in its neighboring countries like Algeria, Jordan, Kuwait, but also with like Britain and France still struggling at this time for film industry, is because Egypt was neutral during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So there were battles on their soil, sand.
Sand is soil.
I don't think it is. Okay. They had like...
Yeah, the North Africa campaign happened.
Yeah, so that happened in Egypt, but it was between the British and the Axis. Egypt was considered neutral. So the film industry was able to, A, continue while its neighbors and competitors had, we'll say, adverse challenges, but it also meant that they had a leg up once the war was over. To kind of give you an idea of what this golden age looked like in terms of number of productions, Egypt had around 16 films that were released between 1944 to 45, and then 50 films from 1945 to 51. And during this time, they established a total of 5 production studios and 244 cinemas across the country.
Okay.
And you can see some of this success in their film industry with their experimentations with color in the 1950s. Now, I kind of teed this up a little bit earlier of nationalist identity and movement. And the leader in the 50s, King Farouk, he was a bit of a playboy king. He wasn't super great. He actually was like, hey, Hitler, if you make it to this part of Egypt, I'll side with you. Like letters like that. And very much a puppet king based on like the British ambassador kind of pulling and manipulating him. In 1952, there was a coup and a revolution that overthrew King Farouk because, as I said, he was too playboy, too European, too puppet. In 1953, we get Egypt, the Republic, and the beginning of nationalizing assets like the Suez Canal in 1956, which kind of starts off a lot of political things, including the Arabic Cold War, where Egyptian films were kind of occasionally were boycotted by other countries in the Arab world because people were unhappy with these decisions.
Sure. Lines getting drawn in the sand, as it were.
Yeah. And Studio Mazir also gets nationalized in 1960. By the time that this film is made, I think by this point, all the studios will have been nationalized. It's kind of described by one of the people working in that time that there would be a heavy government hand into the 1960s in terms of what you could have in your films. These films needed to be about nationalism, patriotism, particularly the Egyptian identity, overthrowing colonialism, a big boost in the genre of realism, and particularly showcasing themes around poverty, the value of work, and a pro-socialist society.
Yeah, the one Egyptian film from this era that I've seen came out the year after this one, and it is the Al Nasser Saladin. They're like big Saladin, the victorious war historical epic, which is very like, get out of our country, Western, imperialist Christian invaders kind of thing.
Yeah, very much. Now, I kind of teed up earlier about the role that Islam plays in Egyptian film. Now, when I first started this, I was under the impression that the reason why film isn't really, or at least like at this time, 60s and earlier, why film doesn't really get established as an industry in Arabic Muslim countries is because acting is considered haram, forbidden.
Yeah, I was under the impression that it was like a looked down upon profession for the same reasons as like all the things about like what you can and can't depict in art and so on.
Yeah, and that may be a factor, but the bigger factor for why Egypt becomes kind of the center is because of that Western influence. So maybe, pushing against religious norms like that. But the debate and questioning of acting as haram even continues today because of that idea of like, well, you're lying. So therefore that should be forbidden. The alternative view is that it's permitted, halal, as long as the actor does not portray forbidden deeds or actions. So recognizing that, like, yes, you're quote unquote lying, but you're telling a story. It's a method of storytelling. So as long as you aren't doing or performing acts that are like forbidden, so murder, adultery, the typical sin acts, that it should be permitted.
Which is kind of the same way as like the sort of Christian Catholic hand wringing around films in the 30s and 40s that led to like the Board of Public Decency and stuff like that.
Yeah. What's interesting here is horror is inherently boundary pushing.
Yeah.
So it's more taboo, particularly in this context. So it kind of explains why we haven't really seen a horror movie from Egypt up to this point. But I do want to point out that there has been an earlier horror movie from Egypt. 1934's Uyuna Sahira translates to Bewitching Eyes. Now, it's described as a horror film, but it's lost. So we don't actually know. What we do know is that it was a box office success. And even when it came out, there were debates about, well, this is too much. It's should it be haram? Should it be halal? Is it okay? Is it forbidden? Whatever. To briefly summarize what that movie is about, there's a singer named Delilah. She's in love with this guy named Sammy, but they struggle to be together. Sammy dies in a car accident, and so Delilah performs occult rituals on his grave to bring him back. His ghost appears and instructs her to inject the blood of a virgin woman into his body in order for him to come back. So using her charm and her bewitching eyes, she roams Cairo and selects a victim. The victim, her name is Hayat, and she does the blood transfusion. She doesn't die. So she has revived Sammy, but now he is enamored with Hayat, and they decide to try to escape from Delilah and have like their own happy ending. And Delilah, in the midst of this horror, is awoken by her maid because it was all a dream. So because it was all a dream, it was considered that it was permissible.
Yeah, because up till that point, like, I'll admit that sounds very boundary pushing for the time and place.
Yeah. Now, it was a box office success, but we haven't seen a horror movie since. So I think the fact that there was still like that debate going on maybe cautioned other directors and other writers from doing something that was boundary pushing.
For sure.
But that kind of brings us up to 1962 for this film, The Crystal Palace.
So I don't know a lot about this movie.
Okay.
I don't really know why this movie happened when it did, but my educated inference is that, like we have been seeing everywhere else, it has to do with the success of Hammer, which we've seen create these cottage industries of horror movies in Italy and Spain and Mexico and France and Germany and Japan and all these places that have been kind of springing up because of that success. What I do know about this movie is that reviews of it from outside of Egypt considered it to be very old-fashioned, that it seemed like something out of the 30s. I don't know much about the plot. It seems like it might be kind of a haunted house movie, but we'll see when we watch it. We'll learn. My research skills trying to learn stuff about this movie really failed me this time around. Oh. And I think part of it's there's just not a lot of information about this movie online, particularly in English. And even like if I could find pages in Arabic that had information that I could like Google Translate, I would still need to find those pages, in which case I would probably need to search in Arabic for them, and even searching in Arabic for this movie didn't bring up a ton of stuff. So I can't tell you a lot about this movie and how it was made and why. What I can tell you about is some of the people who made it. So this film, QASR AL MAL'OUN, The Cursed Palace, was written and directed by Hassan Reda, who was born in Egypt in 1921 to presumably a well-off family, since after finishing high school in 1937, he flew to Paris to study modern art and filmmaking.
It was pretty common for folks to head to Paris in particular for studies. After
finishing his schooling, he became an editor at Studio Misr in 1944, and he began directing films in 1948. The Cursed Palace is not one of his best-known films, but his best-known works came out in the decade leading up to it, with Kol Kal Habibi coming out in 1960. So I don't think his career was necessarily like on the decline or anything when he made this. He continued making films for another decade or so after this and passed away in 1981. And his grandson is the current day Egyptian filmmaker of the same name. Helping out on the script were Udli El Mawalida and Farouk Saeed. The cast is led by Salahudul Fakari, who was a pretty big deal at the time. He was born in 1926 to an aristocratic family. His father was senior police commissioner in the Ministry of the Interior in the Kingdom of Egypt. His family has like a long military history, but they were wealthy enough that there wasn't like a ton of pressure on the kids to necessarily go into military service. And they were like patrons of the arts and things like this. He had, I think, 8 brothers and, probably, I know he had sisters as well, but the number of sisters is not reliably recorded. His brother Mahmoud was an architect who became a filmmaker, and one of his other brothers, Az-ul-Din, was also a prominent filmmaker. So Salah grew up as an athlete, a boxer, and originally he thought he would become a doctor like his grandfather, but ultimately he joined the police academy to be close to his father. He graduated in 1946, and in 1947 he was assigned to the prison where future Egyptian President Anwar Sadat was being held. Salah volunteered to fight in the Battle of El Ismailia in 1952 during the British Revolution of 1952, so he fought against the British. And for his participation in that battle, he was awarded with the National Award of Honor. And in 1956, he fought as a commando during the Suez War, for which he received the Medal of Military Duty from President Nasser. His brother, Az-ul-Din, tried to convince Salah to become an actor, but Salah felt it would interfere with his duties as a police officer. So finally, he was granted leave from the Ministry of the Interior to take the lead role in his brother's film Ayunu Saranat in 1956. That picture was a big hit, and Salah went on to appear in a series of box office hits, becoming a huge star. He made 23 movies between 1956 and 1962.
Wow.
And he remained a huge, bankable, well-known star until his death in 1993. I'm not going to go into the rest of his career like after this in a lot of detail because we'll be here all day. But like he was a huge sex symbol. He was a huge major star. There are 2 streets named after him in Cairo. He won.
Are they both like dude's name street? Because like that would be a little confusing.
One's Southwest, one's Northeast, that kind of thing. He won tons of awards, and he was made a Knight in the Order of the Republic. The impression I got reading about him and his brothers is that this guy's family was a huge part of the Egyptian film industry for like 40 years. So this guy's a big deal. This guy's like the John Barrymore of Egyptian movies or something.
Yeah, the Barrymore family, the Redgrave family.
Yeah.
Sure.
His co-star in this movie is Mariam Fakhruddin, who was born to an Egyptian father and a Hungarian mother in 1933. She won Most Beautiful Face in a pageant put on by a French magazine when she was 18, and she married Mahmoud Dulfakari in 1952 and appeared in many of her husband's films, often alongside his brother Salah. She divorced Mahmoud in 1960, but continued as a lead actress for years, aging up into like matriarchal roles later in her career, and she passed away in 2014. Among the supporting cast, we find Mahmoud El Melajii and his wife, Alawiyatu Jamalian. Mahmoud was born in 1910, and he was a prominent character actor for decades, best known for his villainous roles. And Alawiya was born in Lebanon in 1910, and they had been married since 1938. I don't think they play husband and wife in the movie, but they are husband and wife. But I do know that Mahmoud is, I think, the lead villain here. So The Cursed Palace was released on April 9th, 1962 by Bana Film, and I do know it was a box office hit. Unfortunately, it has no real available home video release in North America that I know of. Like maybe there are imports you can get and stuff, but nothing with like support for the English language.
Sure.
A YouTube version with proper English subtitles was taken down. So we will be watching a YouTube version with auto-translated English subtitles for our viewing. So, you know, best of luck to us in following the story. Hopefully they're not incomprehensible subtitles and we can follow along with what's going on.
Yeah, presumably, like the last time we had to do something like this, the sound was particularly challenging, and so the auto-translate subtitles had some holes. So hopefully, you know, sound has gotten a bit better for these guys.
Yeah.
They've been using sound for like 30, 40 years. I'm sure it'll be fine.
So, yeah, hopefully I'm going to put a link, like I'm going to put that version that we're going to be watching in the Scream Scene playlist. And so hopefully people can watch along.
And you can find that playlist on our website, screamscenepodcast.com. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss The Cursed Palace from 1962, directed by Hassan Reda.
See you on the other side, everybody. Welcome back to Scream Scene, everybody. We just finished watching The Cursed Palace, QASR AL MAL'OUN from 1962, directed by Hassan Reda. What did you think, Sarah?
You know, pretty good, considering the country's first extant horror movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, just a note for listeners, if you hear in the background, Paradox has found a new toy, and it has a little bit of a plastic thing that hits the floor. So if you hear commotion in the background, that's what that is. I have to agree with the people saying that it's a bit old-fashioned, not only because it's like 1962 and it's referencing movies from like the 20s. You could maybe squint and say maybe early 30s, but like mostly in the 20s. But like, it's the first horror movie from this industry. I think you can also see some influences from giallo and some other things. So I don't know. I thought it was a pretty good run.
I think the fact that it is so old-fashioned, that it feels exactly like something that Universal would have made in the 1940s, was honestly quite helpful in following the plot, given the inadequacies of the auto-translated subtitles that we were dealing with. There were a lot of times where I was like, oh, I'm so glad I know exactly what's happening in this scene because I've seen this scene so many times before in English in other movies.
Yeah. I will say, like, the YouTube subtitles did all right.
Yeah.
So if you do want to check this out, check it out on our YouTube playlist. But yeah, just know the plot ahead of time to help guide what is happening.
I think the movie has a very bombastic score, and the YouTube auto-generated, auto-translated subtitles have a really hard time when there's talking and music going on at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And ironically, the faster someone talked, the easier it was able to translate.
Yeah.
Which I think also just points to the fact that Arabic is a very melodic language.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's speaking a lot and quickly, YouTube's able to be like, oh, this is someone talking, rather than thinking like, oh, is this sound effects? Is this music or applause? What is happening here?
Yeah.
But why don't I tell the good folks at home what happens in the movie?
To the best of our ability.
Yes. I'm going to lay out some character names first. So we have Hassan, who is the lawyer and our main character. Yusriya, who is the girl, the daughter in our story. Fahmi is the father. We have the butler, Mosri, the housemaid, or potentially even the aunt of Yusriya. I believe her name is Nageya, or at least that's what the Wikipedia page listed as the character name, but I don't know if we ever saw it come up in subtitles.
It did a couple times here and there, but I think the subtitles had a hard time parsing it. But Nagia or Nagea or something like that.
The other challenge with it is, they refer to her as auntie, which that's pretty standard for, I'll say, non-white families and communities to say oh, woman who is close to the family, you're my auntie, regardless of whether you're blood related. And she in return would also call Fahmi brother. But then there was also stuff going on later on in the movie that the way that they talked about Masri was that's the butler, but Nageya is your aunt.
Yeah.
So it's oh, are they meaning blood relative?
It's tough too because, when you have YouTube auto-translating the Arabic, everybody's calling each other my brother, my son, my daughter, when they're not meaning it literally, when it's just kind of the equivalent of someone in English being like, hey son, bring over them boxes and help me with this work or whatever. So yeah, I thought it was at first a sort of metaphorical auntie, but by the end of the movie, I became increasingly convinced that she is supposed to be Fahmi's sister. It doesn't really make a difference for the plot.
No, I just like talking, I guess.
No. It's a good thing to bring up because other people will also be confused when watching the movie if they don't have good English subtitles.
And then the last character I'll call out here is Fadi, who is our comic relief and best friend of Hassan.
Yes.
The Costello to his abbot.
Yes, very much so. He's very Costello-coded.
So the film is set in Mansoura in Algeria. We know this because the characters refer to being on the train from Egypt. And so Hassan is sent to Fahmi and his family to handle Fahmi's will. Now, when he comes to the house or the palace, the mansion, it's dark and creepy. There's rumors of it being haunted. So it's a little creepy. When Hassan was first traveling to Algeria, he happened to actually meet Yusriya on the train. And so it's a pleasant surprise to see her here again. Fahmi explains to Hassan that, my daughter, Yusriya, is the last person I have. We have these servants. They're great, but I want to make sure everything is left to her. Important to note here is Fahmi is paralyzed and he also has this chronic cough. So it's kind of implied he's not long for this world. So he really wants to make sure everything's set in stone, that Yusriya is going to be taken care of. Fahmi insists that Hassan stay the night there as he's come a little late in the day. And during the night, Hassan overhears almost like a ghost creeping about. He hears these disembodied footsteps. The camera happens to show us that it's a man's pair of legs and shoes in a suit.
Shadow of a man, yeah.
Shadow of a man. After Hassan leaves to go sort out the paperwork, the following night, Yusria hears someone creeping about, and on her way downstairs sees someone attack her father. She screams and faints, and when she comes to, she tries to explain that she's pretty sure that she saw someone attack and kill her father, and yet her father here in the chair cannot be him. She saw him die, so who's this in the chair? Clearly someone is impersonating him, or it's a ghost or something.
Yeah, meanwhile, like, her dad is there in his wheelchair being like, what's wrong with my daughter? She's clearly seeing things, or something's wrong, because he's clearly there alive.
So Yusria is treated as if she's had a bit of a nervous breakdown. So when Hassan returns, she can't legally sign paperwork and confirm this will. Masri and Nageya are also seeming weird and almost having kind of a conspiracy between the two of them. So it kind of plants the seed of, are they jealous of the inheritance? We're also seeing this strange man at the window kind of terrorizing Yusria. He has kind of a face that's lit from underneath with a flashlight and then skeletal hands.
And I think that she thinks it's the ghost of her father who she thinks is dead because she thinks her dad is a doppelganger.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to follow everything, but I think that's what's going on here.
Yeah. Hassan and his friend Fadi go to investigate, including looking up and finding Masri's daughter. We were told that his daughter died when she was young, but here we find her being kind of, I think, a sex worker.
Yes.
And she's not able to offer any kind of information about what might be going on. And after Hassan and Fadi leave, we see her laughing and talking to this strange shadow of a man off screen, saying like, yeah, don't worry. Like, they asked like you said they would, and I didn't say anything. And then she gets murdered by this man.
And everything up to this point is, I think, really making you suspect Masri, because when Hassan and Fadi are exploring around and listening in and doing their investigation, they find a pair of like Spirit Halloween skeleton costume gloves in like Masri's like servants' quarters. And they find these gloves, so they think it's him. And so I think as an audience, you see this man skulking about and you're pretty sure it's him. At one point, Hassan brings the gloves to Fahmy to be like, hey, I think your servants are planning something against you. And Fahmy's like, oh, thank you for bringing this to my attention, young man.
And then he burns them.
Yes.
When no one's around. When we get the reveal, we learn that Fahmy, the father, has a twin brother. Dun, dun, dun. He was in prison, and he has tried to take Fahmy's place by impersonating him. He wants the full inheritance. The servants were kind of catching on to the point where Nageya, like, quote unquote, accidentally spilled boiling water onto his leg to see if he would react. Fake Fahmy, I don't think we get his name.
Farid,
okay. So Farid, the twin brother, plans to basically kill Fahmy and frame the two servants. So that way they are out of the way, Yusria will be out of the way, and he will get the full inheritance. But Hassan comes in just in time to save the day before the twin can kill Fahmy. And, you know, he's found out, and the servants rescue actual Fahmy. And so, yay, the day is saved. And the movie ends with Hassan and Yusria on the train to leave Mansoura and live happily ever after. So that's the end. Is there anything that you want to kind of highlight that I might have missed in this plot summary?
I think the movie does a really good job with the misdirect of making you think it's the servants.
Yeah.
Making you think it's Nageya and Mosri. Because when it's finally revealed that it's this twin brother we've never heard of up to that point, who even Yusria doesn't know exists, who is very explicitly the evil twin brother, Like Fami is characterized through the whole movie as being like super good and super kind and super nice in a way that's like clearly meant to be a misdirect for the audience because this actor was known for playing villains, and it's like, oh, he's playing such a nice guy. Anyways, the whole movie, the servants are acting super weird and suspicious. They're whispering to each other. They're seemingly trying to kill Fami, or at least like badly injure him at times. Like you suspect they're going to try and poison him. And it's just like, you know, all the clues point to them. And so it all makes sense once we know that they suspected Farid of having impersonated Fami. So all of their weird skulking about was them doing their own like parallel investigation, trying to figure out what's going on. So I think that was really well done.
Yeah, and Farid, when he's like explaining his master plan to Fami, he mentions how Nagaya sent Masri to go check on the prison and had he escaped, what's going on. And you see that like what he says that the servants were doing all matches up with what we saw the servants doing and then behaving strangely. Like it all kind of helps explain.
It's well written. Like he's going to frame the servants because he got their fingerprints on like a fire poker that he's going to beat Fami to death with. And we actually saw him get those fingerprints on it in like an earlier scene where it seemed innocuous. Like it's well done.
There isn't anything, I'll say, revolutionary going on in terms of like the genre or anything like that. We do see black gloves being worn by Farid for when he goes to go kill Fami.
Yeah. And scenes where we where we can't see his face yet, right?
Yeah. But we also still have the, I'll say, tropes or hallmarks of horror movies with lightning and thunderstorm, face at the window, wolves howling at night.
Yeah.
Just like the way that the cinematography handles the amount of shadow, and we get some interesting, yes, we get some Dutch angles, but we get some interesting angles where like we're shooting up at people. So just like neat, interesting things going on here. And they definitely understand the signifiers of horror movie, and they are actively using them here.
So one thing I will say, if you're trying to picture this movie in your head and you haven't seen like Egyptian cinema from this era, everyone for the most part is in Western clothing. There are a couple of characters who maybe are wearing like a fez or a turban here and there, but like for the most part, a lot of these characters are not only dressed in like suits, but like Yusria, who's played by a mixed race woman, and who in a black and white movie, she looks very light skinned. She has like lighter hair. I think it might even be like a dark blonde, basically. She's dressed entirely like you'd expect a Western woman in 1962 to be dressed. So all these characters look very modern. They look very Westernized. And really, it's the like women's fashion in this movie that I think is the biggest giveaway that it's from 1962 and not 1942 because of how traditional the plot is. Like you said, it's not doing anything revolutionary. When the subtitles gave out, I could still basically understand what people were saying because I'd seen, you know, oh, here's the scene where she says, I saw something. And the old lady goes, no, you didn't. You just need to sleep. Like, you know what I mean?
What I will say is, like, if you think back to Cat and the Canary, it seemed like something supernatural was going on. There's like the creepy, clawed, hairy hand that tries to reach out and grab her. Whereas here, I think because of the influence of Italian cinema with giallo, it's a man with black gloves.
Yeah, I think that, like, obviously there's a hinting at supernatural stuff because you have Fadi at the start of the movie being like, oh, they say that place is haunted, and you have her...
a taxi driver with a horse. Like, the horse refuses to go up the road. He's like, no, I'll only take you to Borgo Pass. Like,
yeah.
Kind of influence there.
I think the other thing is, of course, the face at the window with the skeletal hands tapping at the glass. Like, this is meant to make Yusria think that this is like the ghost, the skeletal ghost of her dead father. And So that has like a supernatural vibe to it. But the audience is let in really quick on the idea that no, someone is doing this. And then very quickly, you're meant to be thinking that it's the servants who are doing this. And I think at no point do you really think her father's dead because he's there in the wheelchair. Like the shock is that he is actually a doppelganger, but the father's still alive in the basement.
Yeah.
So I think that there's some gestures at the supernatural, but I also wonder if how much of the movie getting to the point really quickly, which I did appreciate as someone who's seen a variation on this plot 10 million times. I wonder how much of getting to the point quicker is also a bit of heading off like objections about depictions of supernatural things in a movie where it's like, see, there's no ghosts. It's all fake.
Yeah. I was also thinking, so this movie, it's set in Mansoura, which is a place in Algeria. I guess there's also a city of the same name in Egypt, which is fun. But I was wondering if the fact that it's not necessarily in Egypt, making it easier to depict horror when a lot of the other, like, with the nationalizing of film studios and everything being very pro-Egypt and pro-socialist country and socialist society and things like that, like the fact that it's taking place outside of Egypt maybe makes it easier.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that in like early American horror where it's like, oh, we're in, nondescript. I was going to say like we're in nondescript Europe in a nondescript year. Was kind of a very common thing in early American horror.
Yeah.
I think the cast is pretty good. They're doing exactly what they need to. They're hitting these archetypes really strongly.
I think Miriam does the standout job.
Yes. She's particularly good as the Scream Queen here. She has really good screaming scenes.
She does a really good job of like holding her face in her hands so you can still see her eyes. But her fingers are laid out in such a way that it still feels like unplanned. Yeah, I don't know how to describe what I mean.
She's doing like a, grab your face scream in a way that feels natural, but also scary as opposed to like Home Alone. She has a really great scream. She has a really good look of fear. You really believe that she's like on the edge of hysteria. She's also gorgeous. So like, great performance from her. It is really noticeable the way that like everyone in this movie is like, oh, everyone who meets Yusria like instantly likes her, and this guy just like instantly falls in love with her, and she's the most like European looking person in the movie.
Yeah. But anti-blackness happens.
But yeah, I think the cast is really strong. I think the evil twin brother fake out at the end is a really nice twist.
Yeah, I think this is like neat and cool. A standard, if old-fashioned horror, kind of in the line of Old Dark House or Cat and the Canary.
Yeah. I think the ghost at the window scene is probably a highlight, as is the reveal of Farid. For me, the other highlight of the movie is just that like clearly someone sat the actor for Fathi down in front of like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and was like, this is the dude you're going to be, because it's so exactly that character.
Yeah, he hits the mark. He's great.
Yeah.
Costello, also maybe a little bit of like Shaggy.
Yeah, just that classic, like the classic cowardly comic character in one of these old horror movies.
It's a universal language.
It's a universal picture.
Well, would you like to move on to ranking?
Yeah, for sure.
So I would say that, like I just said, Old Dark House, Cat and the Canary. I feel like Cat and the Canary fits a bit closer. So I just want to call out that The Cat and the Canary from 1927 is currently ranked at number 64. That's much higher than I think we should be considering for this movie. But I like to call out waypoints.
Yeah, for sure. I would consider this like a pretty middle of the road Old Dark House movie. Very standard plot about, it's the Cat and the Canary plot, right? Of driving the person nuts so that they can't inherit. So I went looking around for middle of the road Old Dark House movies. At 144, there's Night Monster
Yeah.
from 1942. I don't think this is as good as the movies in and around that area. We've got things like the 1928 Fall of the House of Usher, Phantom of the Convent, etc. So I started looking down from there. Where I kind of ended up as a ceiling for my range was at 204. If you get all the way down there, like movies like the Curse of the Cat People, the Invisible Man sequels, The Climax, which is sort of a Phantom of the Opera riff with Boris Karloff in it.
No, I believe that's the Phantom of the Opera remake with Claude Rains.
No, that movie's called Phantom of the Opera. The Climax was shot the next year on the exact same sets. Originally was going to be a sequel, and then they changed it to an unrelated story with Boris Karloff in the Phantom role. The Claude Rains Phantom of the Opera is just called Phantom of the Opera.
Wow, I'm having
It's the same lead
I know.
actress.
Yeah, it's what is that called? When it's like, is it the Bernstein Bears or the Berenstain
the
Bears?
Mandela effect.
Yeah, I'm having a Mandela effect moment of
Got it.
I don't know. I trust you. That is what the climax is.
Regardless, I think these movies, which are sort of down on this back half of the list a little bit more, are probably better for production value. And the Invisible Man movies have all the special effects in them. The Climax has these big sets. But immediately beneath the Climax at 204 is Voodoo Man, which is a Bela Lugosi movie about trying to bring dead wives back to life or whatever. And, it's a William Bodine movie.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I think I admire Cursed Palace more because of, as we said, there's nothing really special going on here, but like it's a good effort for like your country's first little horror movie. So I made that kind of my ceiling, the Climax at 203. So I think this could be better than Voodoo Man, but I think it's definitely not better than the Climax. To find a floor where, I kind of just started looking down to find where I think you hit something that, this movie's definitely better than, because the fact that it's a little bit like middle of the road means that it kind of can, there's a mushy middle here, right? But at 239, we have The Invisible Ray, which is Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi revenge story with a laser beam. And that's right above Circus of Horrors at 240, which we didn't really like. I think this is probably better than that. We see Circus of Horrors, Giant from the Unknown, Man Beast, Face of Marble. Like we're starting to really get into some Z grade quality movies at that point. So that's my range, is 204 to 239.
Okay, cool. Little similar for us. I want to call out that right in your range is the Dracula Istanbulda.
Yes.
At 217.
Yeah.
When I started looking, I kind of started low. Similar to you, I was like, this feels middle of the list. Let's kind of look around there. And went around trying to find like what feels right. And at 237, La Momia Azteca popped out. It's from 1957, and that's one of the early Mexican horror movies. And it was like an Aztec mummy and kind of adapting the universal horror stuff to a Mexican cultural context.
Yes.
What I found refreshing about The Cursed Palace is it's maybe because it's pulling from stuff that's older than just Universal monsters, but it didn't feel like, oh, we'll just do Universal in Egypt.
Right.
Like, I guess because Universal did that with The Mummy.
Sure.
But they went for something different. So I felt like La Momia Azteca made sense as a floor for me, especially since Dracula in Istanbul is right here as well. Looking up, I saw Mark of the Vampire at 195. And the reason why this caught my eye is it's a similar, like, I forget if it's like an inheritance thing or something, but they're trying to scare someone by having these like fake vampires
Yes.
around.
Yes.
And due to, I forget if it was like due to cutting in the script or cutting of the film itself, but we lose some of the backstory of those characters.
Yes.
In The Cursed Palace, something that we didn't really touch on is Masri. They have those floating points of like, he treats his daughters being dead from like a young child. Yusria has a line that says like, you know, he's treated me like I was his daughter after she died. And then we learn that no, she's actually still alive. And clearly she's had an ongoing sort of some kind of relationship or partnership with the Farid, the evil twin. And after she dies, Masri is the one who's burying her.
And Masri, well, someone's burying her. I don't remember if it was Masri for sure, but I do know, and I think we forgot to actually say this in the plot summary, Masri's the one who kills Farid.
Yeah. Because so we do see that it's him who's burying the daughter, burying unnamed daughter. She has a name.
It's like Korea or something
like that. And as Farid is running away, Masri swings and hits him with the spade.
Yeah.
So
Masri gets like his revenge, but I agree with you. That's the part of the movie that's the most kind of like unclear.
Yeah, and I think that there's also a bit of an emotional core there. And I remember with Lugosi's character in Mark of the Vampire, you know, he has the hole in his temple because he killed himself but came back anyways.
Right, like, which isn't explained because they cut that out of the movie and so on.
Yeah, so there's like an emotional core that's missing there. And I thought that, you know, I think that this could go above Mark of the Vampire for that reason. And some other movies around this point, like I even started looking up all the way to 162 at Invisible Ghost from 1941 because of that like kind of old-fashionedness and being around a creepy house. But this was kind of where I had been looking. Now, Dr. X is at 172, Man from Planet X, Phantom of the Rue Morgue, just in and of itself at 174. Like, I think that stays above The Cursed Palace. But I wanted to give you an idea of, like, the full range that I was looking. So, ultimately, I would kind of say that, like, my floor feels like 237, feels like a good spot. But then my ceiling was a little wishy-washy around like 190-ish, you know?
Got it. So sort of a similar range to mine. I think that, and you know, it might be the language barrier or something, but I don't think The Cursed Palace really hits those emotions as well as some of the titles you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that the cast is good. Nobody's bad here, but it is very like standard. This is like a McDonald's hamburger of a movie in the sense of like, this is the same, right? Like as the thing you've seen a million times. It's as good as that and it's no worse, you know?
Whereas if you think about like Curse of the Cat People, that movie has a lot of like complex themes and emotions going on. It ranks low because in terms of horror, it's fairly tepid, but like it's similar in vibe in the sense of like what it's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and you're mentioning like movies like Invisible Ghost, and I think because of Lugosi's performance and the actress who plays his wife in that movie, whose name I'm forgetting, like
she's the ghost.
The emotional core that you're talking about actually like hits a lot more solidly, and I think it doesn't hit as much in this movie because if Mosri is some sort of emotional core, it's undone by the fact that he's also the red herring for 90% of the movie.
Yeah.
So ultimately, like what we're kind of left with is the overlap, and the overlap between our ranges is mostly my range. The 204 to like 237 or so. So we still need to like narrow that down quite a bit because that's like 30 spots.
What I will say is Voodoo Man and The Return of Dr. X at 206, not very good. And even just thinking about the care for the filmmaking that clearly went into Cursed Palace and the care that One Shot Bodine puts in,
Yeah.
I feel like this should probably go above Voodoo Man.
It's tough though, because like Mystery of the Wax Museum, I think, is much better filmed, but it's less of a horror movie,
Yeah.
right? And we have stuff like The Mummy is very well filmed, but it's kind of boring. And like, you know, so it's tough. I mean, that's why I hit 204, was because I was like, on a filmmaking craft level, this is probably better than a William Bodine movie. Obviously, Return of Dr. X has the fun of Humphrey Bogart. And you got movies below this like Genuina or The Bat that also have like a lot of great elements. The Bat Whispers, Mr. Sardonicus, etc. But if you think that like the right spot is above Voodoo Man, then like I think I'm fine with putting it there.
Okay, cool.
So then entering the list at the new number 204 is The Cursed Palace, QASR AL MAL'OUN from 1962, directed by Hassan Reda. And once again, I apologize for butchering all the Arabic pronunciations in this episode.
If you would like to see this list, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.com. There you can find links to the many episodes that we have mentioned today, as well as our appeals box. If you would like us to consider a different or alternative ranking for The Cursed Palace or any of the other episodes that we've mentioned, please drop us a line through our Ask Box on Tumblr. You can reach out over email at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com. Folks get in touch with us over Patreon, and you can also talk to us over on Blue Sky.
Scream Scene updates every other Wednesday on SoundCloud and on other podcatchers, hopefully. You can subscribe to our RSS feed. Make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you would like to help the show out, you can leave us a rating or a review on the podcasting app of your choice. Leave comments on the episodes. Everything you do to interact with the show basically helps us get seen by more potential listeners, or you can kind of just do that directly by recommending us to your friends, to people you meet who are into horror movies or classic movies or whatever else. And you can share the show online on social media, on your Discord server, whatever works best for you. If you really enjoy what we do, we would really appreciate it if you head on over to patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast, where you can become a patron of the night for as little as $1 a month. Patrons at higher levels get access to bonus content. There's some cool stuff from Halloween that you guys should all check out if you haven't yet. So once again, that's patreon.com/Scream Scene Podcast.
So, Ben, what are we watching next week?
I have bad news for you, Sarah. It is another Hands of Orlac adaptation. It is an uncredited Hands of Orlac adaptation.
Okay.
So it's the Nosferatu of Hands of Orlac. It's called Hands of a Stranger.
Okay. Sure.
Presumably because they can't use the name Orlac. Anyways, so we will see you then, creatures of the night.
Bye.
Bye.